Welcome back to September meetup from Angular Singapore. My name is Chung, and I'm a founder of Angular Singapore because I'm the one who started the group. So you can call me the founder, but I don't know. I just usually do a lot of stuff here as well. So today we are so happy to welcome Juan Herrera to join us and talk about a very interesting topic. Does bring also Iris and other people to join us as well. It's been a long time I haven't seen Iris. So the talk today is about setting up a maintainable Angular app, and I will give a brief introduction about talk in a couple of minutes. But first, let's do a quick introduction about Angular Singapore and what we are having here. So the agenda will be, we have some introduction and then we go into the set talk, and then there's Q&A. And with that, we have some announcement from the community. If anyone have anything to share, and some general chat, and then we end it. The code of conduct is quite simple. Basically, it's like we have the speaker here coming and join us, and we have other community members. So just be nice to each other. It's just common sense. So with that said, I have the permission to ask people to leave if we need to, but I never really have to do it. So just keep that in mind. The next meetup from Angular Singapore is gonna be on the 5th of October. At the same time, 7 p.m. GMT +8. We try to do the meetup every first Tuesday of the month. We have a Discord channel. This one is basically the channel within the Angular Discord community, which is very big. So we just have a subgroup inside. You can find, you have any question, answer, feel free to come and drop a message. We have the YouTube channel where we will upload all of the talk and some of the office hour into after we finish. If you feel like you need some advice and you just want to have someone to talk to, we allow people to book a free 15-minute chat, like in any topic. Usually, I got a lot of questions about Angular, but it could be React, it could be Vue.js. So it's just for you when you need some, just someone to talk to. It will open up a lot of other stuff. And if you feel like you wanted to speak at Angular Singapore, you can drop me a message on Twitter, and then I'll get back to you. Or if any one of you here, like the community member, you feel like you wanted to you wanted to see a speaker, just let me know the name, and I'll try my best to contact and then bring them to Angular Singapore as well. In Singapore, we have Google Developer Space, which is the home for dev and startup from the region. It basically just, there's a lot of events that incorporate across the region in Singapore, Malaysia, in Vietnam, in Indonesia, and more. So you guys can find a lot of info in sg.dev. We have Singapore JS here, we have Junior Dev SG, we have other groups like Talk CSS, we have React JS. There's a lot more. I'll just give some name. And now we have Angular Singapore. You have some question during the talk, just note it down so you don't forget. And during the Q&A section, you feel free to unmute yourself. But most of the time, just raise a hand, and so that we can keep track of who is asking the question. And you don't feel like comfortable speaking, you can drop the question into the chat so that we can have you to speak it into the session today. And with that, we are almost coming to the talk. But before we go into the talk, we have a small part, which is a speaker warm-up before we get too deep into technical stuff. So it is for Juan. We have a question for you today. And the question is simple. Did you have to delete everything but keep 3 apps on your mobile phone, on your smartphone? Yeah, so it's not like the phone can only texting and answering. So the smartphone. So which one would you keep, and why would you keep that application?
This is really hard. This is not a warm-up. This is really cold.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I never thought about it, but okay, I'm gonna go right away. I'm gonna say Spotify. I will keep Spotify. Music is fundamental. WhatsApp as well.
Okay.
That's how I talk to my family. And that's a hard one. I would probably, since I'm living in Austria and I don't understand most of the things they say because they speak German here, I would need Google Translate
Okay.
almost daily. So yeah.
I see. Thanks, John. For me, I have to keep a calendar to keep track of stuff going on. But yeah,
So
maybe sometime we don't really need it. Yeah, thanks. And yeah, go back to the talk today. It is about setting up a maintainable Angular application. And about the speaker, Juan Herrera is the Google developer expert in Angular and web technology. He loves public speaking, psychology, and job. And for the talk today, I think John will have a lot to share with us. Basically, when you're working with Angular and then you spend a few years with Angular, you will realize there's some pattern, but it's just not obvious enough on the first sight. So today, Juan will just consolidate everything in the past few years that he's been working with Angular in a lot of industry, in a lot of team size, and in a lot of company in different country, and share with us today. And with that, over to you, John, and we can get started with the talk.
super. Thank you very much for such a nice introduction. I have to confess that I was also a meetup organizer at some point, like Alice mentioned, in Medellin, in Colombia. And yeah, I think you're doing a really good job already. So congratulations for that. It's also really nice to see you all here. It's 27 people, and I think that's the record of any of the online talks that I ever did. Because online, I think you don't get as many people sometimes as when you are like live. So I'm really honored. I think the most I had was like 20. So thank you very much for coming all the way today. Yeah, so first of all, I would like to let you know that usually I enjoy a lot interactive presentations, especially because I can tend to get sleepy. So I wouldn't mind at all if you want to just ask questions. In the meantime, just send it over the chat. I actually have the chat open right here. So if you just send the memes or jokes or make fun of me, that's totally fine, and that'll be hilarious. So just ask any questions you want anytime. That's completely okay. But we can also wait until the QA. That's also all right. So I really hope you enjoyed today. And yeah, like first of all, a short introduction about myself. I guess you're seeing my screen already. If you are seeing a planet then yeah, I guess you're seeing the planet. Just to give you an overview, I'm coming from Colombia. So I live. I was born there for 25 years, and then recently I moved to another country. I decided to move to Austria, which is really far away. And yeah, it's like 2 years ago, I've been living here, trying to learn German and trying to connect with the European community, but also the Asian community, trying to get closer to them, because before I was just mostly in America. And so I'm really excited to be here today. Just if you're wondering why I moved, it's because I found a job as well, and it was really nice. I work for a company called Bible. And perhaps if you're wondering what do I really do when I'm not coding, or no, when I'm not working, I like to create apps. And the most recent app I created is called Headscroll. Is this one right here? It's for musicians. I as you can see in the background, I play the guitar. I didn't say I play it well. I just play it. And yeah, and what happens is that when you're playing guitar, often you have to, stop playing guitar to scroll the music, in the computer, or when you're playing the keyboard or anything else. So that's really annoying. And so I created an app that uses machine learning with Angular, and uses TensorFlow as well. And what it does is that it just simply reads your head movement, and then you can scroll the website up and down. So you can just go to headscroll.io and then just look it up. It's made with Angular, so you could judge as much as you like. Probably my Lighthouse score is really bad, so don't even mind that. But yeah, that's me. And besides that, I mean, it has been already mentioned, I am a Google Developer Expert, that if you're not familiar with what that means, Aris as well, he's actually in the call. He's more popular than me. But yeah, Google Developer Experts are just people who like to contribute to the community a lot, are people who enjoy sharing knowledge, either on a private place, like with their team, or outside on a meetup or a conference. And I do enjoy this a lot, so that's why I'm a Google Developer Expert. And if you would like to become a Google Developer Expert, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to also help you become nominated if you believe you have the requirements to be one. This is not a program that is meant to be, closed and VIP, but all the way around. It's a program that is meant to encourage people who are doing a lot of efforts for the community. So if you feel like that's the case, please reach out to me. I'll be happy to help you out with that. Actually, I nominated a couple of people already, so could be the case. And yeah, let's start with the problem and the presentation. The problem I decided to summarize on a single meme, because meme conveys information in really nice ways. And I believe sometimes this is the case when you're working with Angular, that there's a style guide and it provides a lot of information and patterns on how to do things. But if you don't follow the style guide, it just doesn't go well. And you've probably seen these, or I've seen these, when I'm reviewing legacy code. And then I see like, ooh, what is this? And why are you doing it like that? I've seen all sort of things. For example, the most common pattern I see is to use just one module for everything in middle-sized applications. So these sort of anti-patterns are common. And they might be even more common in other frameworks when there is not such an opinionated way of doing things. React, for example, I guess before mostly, but perhaps today as well, it gives you the freedom to just sort of go whichever way you like. You structure your folders as you like, don't limit your creativity. And then Angular is like, you have to do it this way. Somebody just said that I might look like Adios Money. I think that's a compliment, except that I'm not as smart, but thank you. Anyway, so yeah, so what happens is that then you have some frameworks, for example, like Next on top of React that says, okay, my way, please, in a way trying to sort of enforce like a direction. Angular is still very opinionated about how to do certain things, and we'll probably continue to do so. And for that reason, for some people it's easier and for some people it's harder. But either case, sometimes when you just jump into Angular and start working with it and you take a look at the code style guide, it's just very overwhelming, because it's 3 or 4 hours of reading. I actually made a GIF scrolling through the whole thing. And this is, how much scrolling you have to do to go through all the do's and do not that you would have to read about in order to understand it. And I did that, like I did that several times already. But yeah, it's a little bit overwhelming. But it turns out that I was telling before we started with the meetup is that I've been doing Angular for 4 years or 4 years and a half at this point. And over 4 years, it's been an incredible journey. You cannot imagine. I mean, 4 years is probably as much as my university degree, except that my university degree was just, about many things. This has been just about Angular. I really haven't worked with any other framework, and React, I only started using it recently. And I work with teams in every industry, or not every industry, but finances, fintech, banking, retail, real estate, everything. And I also work with small teams, big teams, teams in different countries, and so on. And so I started to identify a set of patterns that would make application better, that were not written there, that I couldn't find in the style guide. And I started to appropriate those patterns and use them more often. And I realized they worked and I liked them and people liked them. And so I wanted to share them with you today. And look, as I said, it's 4 years of things that I've learned. That made me age much faster than normal people. I'm actually 4 years old now. I'm 28, but yeah, certainly it's been quite a journey. So what I'm going to share with you today in a summary is not what's on the style guide, because you can read that already. But it's, for example, what I would assess on an interview. I usually do interviews for front-end developers, and then when I want to go the extra mile, I'm going to ask them the sort of stuff that I'm going to share with you today. and what I've learned the past year. So we're going to get to it. We're going to go one by one. It's about 8 or 7 or 9. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hear your feedback, how you like it, how you don't like it. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, when I start with a project, obviously I would use the CLI. You will probably already know that. But what's not by default anymore in Angular is eslint. As you might have heard, before we have eslint, and it was set up by default with CodeLizer, I guess. And it worked well. And it was nice, and you could customize it. But then they said, okay, we're no longer going to be so into the linting thing. We're going to just let people define the linting way they prefer. And that's totally fine. That's slightly less opinionated than before. Now, eslint was deprecated, so now it's called eslint. And with eslint, you can just format your code or set up the rules that you want for linting purposes. Now there's actually an Angular version for that, so you can actually look eslint Angular, and it will work just well. It's an effort by the community, and I'm usually using that every time I set up a new project. I make sure I have those rules in place. Reality is that when I do that, this is what it looks like. That's a picture of me a couple of months ago. Just trying to set up a new project, but it's fun. You're just looking all through all those rules, and it's like, oh yeah, this is so cool. Yeah, this would help, readability. So you start setting up a bunch of rules, and you start removing them. That's just the cycle of life, right? But yeah, so my first thing is to make sure that you have eslint set up for Angular. That's the one thing that I would make sure it's the case on a project. For certain. Probably you have a preference for another linter. I guess that's fine, but have a linter, and that one it's actually good. Now, on top of that one, you can also have another linter, and this is also a matter of discussion for certain developers. But Prettier is pretty solid, in my opinion. It does a good job. There's a lot of people that do not like certain things, but Prettier is super opinionated on how certain things should be. Is very not so flexible, and in a way this is good, because then most of the times when you have a code with Prettier, and when it becomes a standardized somehow, then you're more familiar with reading code that uses this. So make sure you also have Prettier. Perhaps a meme that also summarizes Prettier and eslint all together would be something like this. This is also a picture of me coding on a regular basis, and using VS Code, for example. But it turns out that it doesn't stop there with the linting. Actually, recently, a couple of months ago, 1 year ago, I started working on a project, and somebody mentioned something called styling to me. And I was like, oh, styling. Okay. So you can style the CSS. I mean, you can do that with Prettier already, and that's rather okay. But it's very basic, the styling you can do, or the linting you can do on styles. Styling will allow you to do more advanced things, such as, for example, not using certain hex formats, hexadecimal formats, how you control the dots, if you want alphabetical order of the properties, and it would actually also help you prevent certain things from being written that are not supported anymore or are not recommended anymore. Stylelint is, it's a way to leverage the quality of the CSS or Sass code that you write. And I do recommend it to just keep your code base really consistent. And at this point, I want to make a what's the word? I want to make a I'm gonna make a what's the word? A pause and have this conversation with all of you right now. And that conversation is what I'm talking about here, just so that you remember, does not necessarily apply for really small applications. If you're just doing a small app, if you're just doing something quick for the weekend, you certainly do not need to get to use Prettier or eslint or stylelint. But this is actually for the sort of projects that involve a big team, or when you're this team lead that is trying to set up a new project for the future client or something like this. That's when it makes the most sense. If you're just doing something small, I think you can skip many of these things. But this is more when you're in charge of a project, or when you're this developer who wants to improve the code base or the quality of the code. Then this is for you. This is what we're looking at it today. Just a reminder of that. Okay, let's go back. That was too intimate. But let's get back to it. So yeah, and last but not least, you can always step up your game when you're setting up the linting. Like after I'm done with the CLI and I'm done with the linting, I usually take another hour or half an hour to set up the lint stage. What is this package? And the lint stage is very nice because it pretty much will make sure that anything that you are about to commit gets linted before the commit. And this is convenient because what happens is that often I had many PRs, pull requests, in which I was just typing, committed something, and then immediately right after I realized that I forgot to lint something. So when I push it to the to repository, some sort of action failed or some sort of check failed because the code was not linted, and that was silly. So with lint stage actually works really well. And you can make sure it runs Prettier, stylelint, and eslint all at the same time if you like. And then all the code is linted. All the code that you modified is linted, and then you're good to go. I highly recommend using this one to step up the game a little bit. Of course, there are other alternatives out there, but this is one I use and I can recommend. It works well. Good. So far, if there are any questions, just shoot them right away. Any comments, happy to see them. Even emojis, I love emojis, so you can just send anything. Okay, so next step, when we're done with the linting, and I know the code base will have certain format, then I move on to the next level, and that is the code itself. How can I ensure that the code that is written follows a correct pattern or a good style guide? And we are going to start with CSS. I don't know if you ever heard of ITCSS, but I think this is the one sort of CSS architecture that is not so popular, but it's really well done, I would say. Perhaps it's not so popular because patterns or frameworks or architectures like BEM or SMAX were also more popular, in which you have to use __ for objects and modifiers and so on. And that's fine, you can use that. But ITCSS provide an architecture on how to place your CSS all together. So it turns out that it provides some sort of levels, as you can see on the screen, and then you can define styles that apply, to general things such as layouts, such as objects, such as elements, and then it helps you keep things way more modular, as opposed to have just one global style where you have a bunch of CSS that at first is just 100 lines, but as the project continues, you have more and more because suddenly you have to, just do some font size that applies to the whole page, and then suddenly you have to load some fonts here, and suddenly you have to make all the paragraphs have a certain margin, and yeah, all of that. It's kind of gets stuck in one file, and that's not so nice. So ITCSS is a structure that I work with as well. I recommend you can just give it a try. So yeah, totally good for it. Of course, you can use it in combination with BEM, and I did it as well. And it depending on the project can be an overkill, but sometimes it's just fine. When you're using the component approach, maybe you don't need BEM, but it's okay if you use it. There's a question actually. Does linting have the same meaning and follows the same pattern for .NET projects as in web ones? Not sure. I'm not so familiar with .NET projects, Aris. Maybe if you want to chime in and perhaps suspend.
Yeah, actually, I would like to ask for desktop applications because, okay, in the company that I work, we have the web team that we have linters and Prettier and all this stuff. And so the desktop team that develops .NET framework applications wants to be organized in the same way. So I was wondering if there is the lint process. Is there actually a lint process for desktop applications as well as for web apps?
Good question. I honestly don't know the answer. I don't know. I would assume it could be the case. It makes sense that it is the case. I guess it should exist. Probably more baked on the IDE than on some sort of package, but I couldn't answer right now. Maybe if there's somebody in the audience that knows the answer, feel free to chime in or write in the chat. But I would assume that's the case. If you don't get an answer, then I will just look it up also later and then perhaps reach out to you.
That's great. Thanks.
Sure. Okay, so going back to the CSS thing, yeah. So remember, ITCSS, take a look at it. I highly recommend it for projects that are bigger, and yeah, and then you can put BEM on top of it. But this is where it gets interesting. Lately, last couple of months, I was working with Utility First CSS, and I gotta say it, I loved it. It was amazing. It was super nice. Despite what everybody says, I was like, wow, this is so cool. No, actually, I was the one saying that to my team. I was like, hey, this is the best. We had to use it, just like any fanboy. And they were like, no, that looks ugly. And I don't know. And I was like, okay, I don't care. I'm the team lead. You're going to do what I say. And and then so we did it. No, it was not like that, but I managed to convince them to give it a try. They didn't dislike it at the end. They actually liked it. They said, "Yeah, it's okay, it's nice." We didn't use Tailwind, which is more popular sometimes. We used simply Bootstrap, which was easier to set up because Tailwind needs some sort of setup in Angular. And super nice, all good, all went super well. We got rid of many SAS files, so there were very, very little. The CSS that we have to write wasn't as complicated as you would think, with a lot of responsive design conditions and stuff like that. It was rather easy and straightforward. So it was a good choice in that project. So if you haven't tried before, I would suggest you take a look at it. Yeah, and there is a good link by Angular Nation Host. Yeah, is that Bonnie? I hope it's Bonnie.
No, it's me. I am using a Bonnie account to record the meeting.
Okay. But greets to Bonnie. Right. So yeah, I'll suggest that. And okay, so yeah, that's sort of around CSS. But it turns out that it can get more interesting when you're working with Angular, because there is a tool out there called RxJS, and it's a tool I'm super fan of because I love the reactivity of it. And as you know, with RxJS, it's baked in Angular. And there's the one plugin or one package that I often use by Nathaniel called Until Destroy. So it turns out that when you're working with RxJS, you're working with observables, and then you are naturally doing something like unsubscribing, because you want to keep the performance good and so on and so forth. And there are many ways out there to do this in JavaScript that are better than just .unsubscribe, a way that helps you keep track of all the observables in a component and unsubscribe from them all. But Until Destroy, in my opinion, that's the most elegant job in that regard. So whenever I set up a new Angular project, I make sure that I install Until Destroy from the very beginning, and I ask developers to actually use it to unsubscribe. So if you take a look at the code for a second, it's just a component with an engine in it, has a simple observable interval, and then it has a pipe. And that pipe operator or function is called Until Destroyed. You just pass this as the reference to the class. As you see, there's also in line number 3 a decorator for the Until Destroyed function to work. And then you can just subscribe or do whatever you want. And good to hear that it's used. So I'm strongly suggest you to give it a try. And by the way, if anybody uses another strategy, I'm super happy to hear about it as well. Just interested in also check that out. Nice. So yep. So Until Destroy, highly recommended. And we're gonna move on to something else. Is state management. So when it comes to state management, you can use any tool out there. I have to be honest, I haven't used in production anything different than NgRx, and that might be biased because I kind of learned NgRx first, and then I felt comfortable with it. But if there's one thing that saves a lot of time when I'm working with it, it's not when I use NgRx alone, but when I use it in alongside with NgRx data. If you're not familiar, by the way, good question by Eileen with the RxJS. Can I use take one? Yes, you can use the take one. I think the only thing with take one is that sometimes it doesn't do the trick. Just going back slightly here to the Until Destroy. Take one, it's an operator or function that you can use to tell the observable to perform an operation once, and then as soon as you get one value, then you destroy the observable. But that's not always the case. Sometimes you actually want to take as many as you like. And you want only to destroy the observable when the component is destroyed. That is when the user navigated to another route or something. So, and when that's the case, you cannot use the take one. For everything else, I guess take one will suffice. It's just that somehow I also like the until destroyed sort of format or approach because it's rather elegant, whereas take one can be confused with, is this logic or is this just something we wrote to destroy the observable? So sometimes it can be tricky to know, but also super valid. I also use it many times and it works. So yeah, so with NgRx data, it's the one thing I use because it indeed saves me a lot of time. And a lot of time, I mean for applications that use the RESTful pattern. For those that do not even think about it, it's complicated. But for those that use a RESTful and backend, then you're really good to go with NgRx data. I strongly recommend it. If you need also to customize a lot of things, it can get tricky, I have to confess. But when that's not the case, the amount of time it saves you, it's gigantic for real. Like we use it on a project, and perhaps the primary factor why we use it is because of the budget, money, and time it saved us, a lot of it. So anytime we needed to, for example, we were already in the project, like 3 or 4 sprint already. We were already comfortable doing development, doing features, and at any point, whenever we needed to create a new view where we needed to display some data. And they say like, okay, here's the endpoint, please retrieve the data and display it. NgRx data will do the trick very quickly. We're talking about 15 minutes or 20 minutes of code, or even less, honestly. And you would just, reference the classes and so on and so forth. And then immediately you have all the data available right there without the need of further HTTP and worrying about selectors or reducers or effects, having all the advantages of Redux, of our Redux application in a really nice, straightforward way with NgRx data. So I recommend you take a look at it, that one. But on the other hand, I would also be understanding if somebody uses Akita or NgXS. I guess those are also popular nowadays. So I guess that would also be fine. Okay, good. Moving on to the next one. We're actually good on time, I guess. We're good on time. If you're having fun, please thumbs up. I can see that we actually have already 30 people. So that's actually surprising because that means 3 people arrived. So if you're having fun, thumbs up. If you want more spiciness and more fun, then double thumbs up. And then I'll make sure I start making jokes and bring my comedy show to the presentation. Anyway, so yeah, moving on to the next one. TypeScript. So TypeScript, as you know, it's also perhaps the de facto way of doing web applications nowadays. Node, React, I guess Vue also was, thinking of doing that eventually. Oh, somebody sent many thumbs up. Okay, that's gonna be hard. I'll give it a try. So yeah, thank you very much. I'm glad you're enjoying. So yeah, with TypeScript, what happens is that it's very common across the web ecosystem, and there is one library that I also make sure that I include from the very beginning in any TypeScript, TypeScript or Angular project. And in this case, it's Lodash, -es. So you probably heard of Lodash before. If you haven't, well, it's pretty much a library or a package with plenty of utilities like functions to just do simple operations faster. So far it's like a jQuery for JavaScript, right? It's like it's so nice and convenient. So it is. That's what it is. But it turns out that when you just install Lodash, the normal Lodash, you install the whole package, and that's not tree shakeable. So that's an issue because then you are probably using 1 or 2 functions, but then you're not using anything else, and you're just sending and shipping all that to the client. So you don't want to do that. You probably want to install Lodash-es, which is the ECMAScript module feature baked in this package. Therefore, it is tree shakeable. So as soon as you import a function, you're not importing anything else. So if anybody would have an objection, performance wouldn't be a problem at all whatsoever. Now, why would I use Lodash if, for example, JavaScript provides a bunch of array methods that are really convenient? For example, all of these: sum, reduce, every, concat, fill, includes. So the reason is because while these array methods work really well, Lodash provides functions that are not covered by these functions. So just for example, clone deep. So anytime you want to clone a object deeply, that is not just in the first level, but anything below that could be objects or arrays, you need to do a clone dip most of the time, especially if you're working in a Redux architecture, because that's important there. And there's a straightforward way to do it sometimes. I mean, you can use a couple of sort of hacks, I would call, like JSON stringify or things like this. But yeah, it can be a little bit not so elegant, I would say, like maybe not so readable, or maybe prone to fail or prone to have bugs on it. So in such case, I would rather 100% use Lodash clone dip function. And then, as you can see in the screenshot, just does it, and then it just works really well. But there are plenty others. In fact, there are those weird scenarios in which you need the first element of an array compared with the last element of an array, and then you need to do some sort of operation there. Chances are that Lodash will allow you to achieve that in a much more elegant way, as opposed to having 3 4s concatenated and a bunch of flags and trying to figure out what happened there and here and there. So most of the time, I would recommend using Lodash. Lodash also has better performance for cloning deep cloning objects sometimes. So I would totally suggest you go like that. Funny. Yes, Lodash. Yes, Lodash is Spanish. Sounds sorry fun. Yeah, but something related to Spanish, I swear. So there's a question: is Lodash street shakeable for using it in Angular? I think Lodash is street shakeable regardless of the framework you use it. But yeah, if you use it in Angular, it is street shakeable, so you're good to go. Indeed, yes, it saves some kilobytes. By the way, question for all of you: write in the chat in the comments. What is the array method that you feel less comfortable with? The one that you will be afraid of explaining. The one you will say like, okay, I think I know map, but I never heard of, I don't know, fill or reduce or any of this. What is the one that you would say none? That's very, very pretentious. But what is the one that you would say like, yeah, I'm not so sure about this one, or I'm not so sure if I understand it? Yeah, flat map, apparently it's common. Reduce, yeah, reduce can be tricky. I had some interviews where I had to use reduce for a couple of things, 2 reduces actually. Yeah, for my current job, I had to use reduce twice in the interview. Yeah, flat map and reduce, interesting. Yeah, I think flat map is I don't think I can explain flat map either. I just wanted to ensure that I can feel good about myself, because I also don't know how to. I think in somehow, no, I'll tell you something. I think what it does is that if you have 2 levels of arrays, then you just make it in just 1 level. So if you have something nested, you can just make it in 1 level. But I'll be honest, I think this is just simply a case that it's not so common, and that might be the reason we don't understand it so much, because perhaps it's not so common. At least it really ever happened to me, so I never really had the need of using perhaps flat or flat map, which I guess they are related. Reduce, nevertheless, on the other hand, is very important, and I suggest I use it constantly. I like it because it's really nice. So if anyone feels uncomfortable with reduce arrays, perhaps it's worth taking a look, because I do think it's really nice. But it's pretty much it's the same as map, because most of you probably know map. It's the same as map, but instead of giving you another array, it gives you just 1 element. So whenever you have to have an array, you need to turn it into not another array, but 1 element, then reduce is probably the way to go. So if they tell you, what is the sum of all the elements in this array, reduces the result, because it gives you a number at the end, not another array. If they tell you, find the highest value in this array, okay, well, you could use another one, but reduce could probably be the one you could use as well. Anyway, yeah, there's an example right there. Oh yeah, somebody put something there, flat map. Okay, nice. Thank you, Darius. Okay, and let's wrap it up with TypeScript with something called path mapping. For example, as you can see in the screenshot, I have a really nice import statement right here. This is common in the projects, especially in legacy projects. I tend to see these. I heavily think that this affects readability a lot, especially when you have not 4, but 10 imports. So in such cases, I strongly recommend using TypeScript pad mapping or pad aliasing, I guess it's called, which allows you to change the imports to this. So they become, I think the words, absolute imports. Yes, so that you, no matter where you are in the project, anytime you need a core module, you simply put add core/core.module. That's simply the case. This is before and this is after. And anytime I'm setting up an Angular project from the beginning, from scratch, for a new client or so, pad mapping is something I make sure that it's right there. So if you're wondering how to do it, it's really straightforward. Just go to the tsconfig file and you make sure that in the pads property right there, you can just put the direction and the alias, and then you're good to go. That's how you do it. Yeah. Okay, so I think this has been fun. I hope you like it. I'm just going to wrap it up with final recommendations. These are no longer plugins or packages that I installed in Angular, but more like approaches that I make sure that I have in my Angular application, like patterns that I want to make sure that are followed by my team. And yeah, perhaps it's worth it. By the way, thanks for the hint, HTML hint. Yeah, HTML linting, good one. I didn't talk about that one. For that one, I use Prettier. Prettier does a job for HTML as well, or for JSX if you're working with React. But yeah, I never really went to the extent of using HTML lint, but I think it's a good idea to do it as well. I think, yeah, it's totally worth it because I think it can have some benefits as well. Thank you for that, Darius. I'm going to take a look at that one. So, final recommendations. First of all, Angular modules. Understanding Angular modules is the one and foremost single question that I ask on interviews. Whenever I'm interviewing an Angular developer, I usually sit down with them and ask him, what do you think about modules? That's a question that I never forget to ask, and I would like to hear what they say. It's like when you sit down with a physicist and then you're like, okay, well, what do you think about black holes? What a crazy thing, right? And then depending on the degree of understanding, they will answer on a bigger level or a smaller level. And same with modules. I think modules could be like black holes in the sense that they can be tricky, in the sense that you can get them wrong easily, in the sense of, I've said in the sense of 4 times already, but in the sense of how you import one and the other, how you name them, how to use them, how do you separate your app, how do you lazy load your app, how do you perhaps structure your app itself. I think all of that is very important to ensure that an Angular application is maintainable. That's the main tenet, to ensure that an Angular application is maintainable. So if module is something you're not so comfortable with, I think the Angular style guide provides good insights, and you can take a look at that one. This screenshot here provides an understanding, a basic understanding of it, but really key for that one. The next thing that I think it's a next recommendation that I think it's important to keep an Angular application maintainable is merging and combining observables, that is. Because understanding the difference between these two and the different operators that you would need, that you can use with RxJS, it's also tricky. It's common that you need to make a HTTP request that ends up in another HTTP request, or so on, and then you want to handle those observables gracefully and correctly, and that can be hard. And sometimes you don't know if you need to use combine latest, merge, exhaust map, fork join, and zip, all those different combinations that could be out there. Even I've been doing Angular for 4 years, and still sometimes I need to just look it up and say, like, okay, what do I need here? So very important for the code base to remain maintainable, to use the proper merging and combining operators in RxJS. And last but not least, TypeScript utility types. There are plenty of utility types out right there that you can use. I've only used like 4, seriously, only 4 out of the 20 that's right there. But I think those 4 can be really convenient. One of them is, for example, partial. Whenever you have an interface and you just want to update a part of the interface, partial is the right way to go. You can also put the question mark in the interface, and that works. But partial, I found it more elegant sometimes, depending on what you need to do. You can also use record, for example, to create sort of objects that are typed. So, and you can even combine it with enums, so to make it more appropriate. Enums are the other thing that I also make sure that you use. It's very common that I'm working with a team and then somebody suddenly just created a constant somewhere in the code, just like that. And 3 or 4 constants were right before the other one. And I'm like, okay, wait, this can be an enum. We can make an enum out of this. For example, as in the example you see in the screen, direction, up, down, left, and right. So enums are very convenient, especially when you're using switch map to determine what gets rendered or what doesn't. So it's really, really heavy advocating for enums. And last but not least, using the proper chaining operator. And what's the name of this other operator? It's nullish coalescence operator. Yes, I guess that's the word. Which is, as you can see in the screenshot, it can be tricky. It can be tricky to figure out what are the differences. But this ensures, like as a summary, that when you're writing code, you write code that is less prone to fail at runtime because a certain property was not provided by the backend for some reason, because the backend got updated or because there was an error or something. When you expect the front end to receive data just like you want it to receive it, it's just like, it's just like, buying a lottery ticket and it's like, okay, I'm going to win this one, I'm sure. It doesn't work like that. Sometimes you just don't get what you want. That's a life advice. But yeah, that's the case. So as you can see in the example, in line number 2, you're just accessing, this, what's the word for this? The structure in an object. It's really nice, and you get the name. But then it could be that person, or it could be that the name is actually not defined. So you want to manage to do that differently. So you can use the what is this? The ternary operator for that, so that if the value is defined, you use the value. Otherwise, you use the default value. But then on line 8, then you find a new way to do it with the OR operator. But then in line 11, you discover that the other properties could also be undefined. So you use the nullish coalescence. No, nullish coalescence operator. I guess that's the word. No, the optional chaining operator. Yes, optional chain operator. And then on line 14, then you use the optional chaining operator alongside with the nullish coalescence operator. I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know why they name it so hard. It's really hard to say. But you get the point. You get the point. There's a question here. What is the name of the last operator in line 14? Yeah, it's called nullish coalescence operator. It's really hard to write. Yeah, but it's really nice. It's really nice. I highly recommend it. So I make sure that the code, whenever I'm writing code, I make sure that developers ever assume that what they get or what they get for the backend is what they would expect. That's usually not the case. So you want to be prepared for that with these operators and with default values. Yeah, I think this kind of covers it. It's 10 minutes to 2. So I guess I'm going to wrap it up right now. I'm going to just read through questions in a second, but thank you very much for coming all the way today. I mean, we're 27. We're back to the number we were in the beginning, but seriously, thank you very much for participating. You are really active today, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Juan. Thanks so much.
Wow, so many claps. Yeah,
we should clap, no? I think there's a question specifically for Enum on the chat. Maybe it's something for you and for also Aris.
Yes, let's see. There's one from Aris that says, what happens with organized imports in VS Code when using path mappings? Is it going to mix it with the other Angular and third-party library imports? Yes. Usually it works. It works just fine. So no problem. I mean, when you see mix Angular and third-party library, I mean mix. I don't think so. It will still import Angular stuff from Angular, the path from Angular, so it's fine. And then when you have third library things, it will also come from there, so it's fine. This will just make sure that the imports of your own components and your own modules just look like that, more absolute and easier to read, if that answers your question.
Sure, thanks.
Yep. Nice. Super. There's a question from Georg. When using enums, sometimes I face the issue with having to cast specific strings as an enum before I can actually reference the string as a type. Is there a workaround for that? Yeah, I mean, I guess I know what you mean. But yes, there is a workaround for that. I think I faced what you had to do. Usually you want to try something called type of. I mean, usually what I do is that I play with type of key of. I guess that's what I play with. And then I can manage to make it work, or with key of alone. Usually I play with that one. I cannot think of an example right now, but if I want, I can also send it over to the channel. But usually, yes, there is a workaround around that. So if you look it up, you probably also find it. So you don't have to actually cast it all the time. Yeah, somebody raised their hand.
Yes, I have. I think I saw. Yep.
Hey, thanks for wonderful presentation. My question is like, it's like it may be my only thought. The thing is, when we use RxJS as a NgRx for the state management, right? In that case, what I feel like it's very tricky or that subscribing or dispatching the events. So, what do you recommend for this?
But I didn't get the last part. So you're saying NgRx for state management and RxJS as well?
No. My question is with NgRx, when we manage state globally, okay, in that case, so what I think from like dispatching and subscribing to the event state change, it's like very like a tricky part. What do you suggest for that? What strategy we should follow for that?
Good question. Yes. So really, thank you very much for the question. First of all, really bold of you to use the mic. I have to say that NgRx in itself, I guess or state management in itself is a tricky problem. So this is common and normal to find that sometimes from a certain part of the application you need access to another part, and then you don't really know how to achieve it. I do get what you're saying when you want to access a global part of the application, a global state of the application. I've done it before with NgRx. Usually depends on what you're using, if you're using data or not. Usually you can create selectors that allows you to achieve this. So selectors is probably what you're looking for if you want to access a certain part of the application. Perhaps what you want to take a look at, it's something called feature modules in NgRx that allows you to kind of separate the global state in different chunks, and that might make it easier. But overall, I think selectors would be the way to go about it if you want to access a certain part of the application. If it's harder still, then I wouldn't know. I would need to understand a little bit better the problem to guide you in the right directions. But selectors is probably the first step for that.
So currently I'm working on a project. I'm using selector there. That's you are right. But I think using selector is like to use is like to get the trade for each in every component. For example, you have 10, 12 component where you want a global something from the global state. You have to subscribe that event everywhere.
Got it.
That's the like duplication of code.
Right, I see your point. Good question. Yeah, so regarding this, what you probably want to do is that you can actually, so subscribing would be a normal thing. So don't feel bad if you're subscribing in different components. Probably you want to take a look at your architecture and make sure that your parent component it's the one subscribing and passing the information down to the children component. So to make sure that's the case when you have smart and dummy components. So that's the one thing. The second thing, it's normal to subscribe several times. So don't feel bad about it. Usually the async pipe would help make sure that you don't have to deal with that so much, and it's actually straightforward. Okay. But the third thing that I will suggest, and you can try, is to make sure that your selectors, instead of providing a fraction of the state, they actually provide the different fractions of the state that you would need in a certain place, so that you don't have to subscribe several times. For example, if you have an application where you have customer data, purchases, and I don't know, users, you can also create a state that kind of aggregates all that information into one selector, and that way you save 3 subscriptions only into one subscription. So you want to take a look at that as well.
Thank you. Thanks, John.
Sure. Nice. There are more questions. Nice. Aris is raising his hand.
Yeah, Aris, go ahead.
Yeah. So I have 2 questions. One question about eslint. How do you share, if you have multiple projects, how do you share the same eslint configuration? Do you create a separate eslint file for each project, or do you have one for all of them?
Great question, Aris. I also do not know the answer to this question because I haven't figured it out myself, in the sense that I would love to do that. Like, I would love to somehow centralize it, but I don't know how to achieve it at this point. Like, yes, you could probably create a gist in GitHub and then just put it there and then always copy it from other places. You could also create some sort of package perhaps, and then install it in the projects and make it a single source of truth. And sometimes when you update the package, you update the rules so that organization-wise, everybody uses the same rules. But no, I haven't figured out a way myself or tested a way myself. Usually what I do is to just do it every time. I do it every time also because I like to challenge the decisions I made in the past when it comes to LinkedIn as well. So sometimes when I start a new project, I just review, does this make sense? Maybe just change stuff. Yeah, but I don't have a nice, elegant way at this point for you.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Sure.
I thought you have 2 questions, Aris.
Yeah, the other was, do you think that a style guide should be error or warning? I mean, someone it should be strict, or it should be not so strict.
I think they should be warnings. Yeah, I started working on a project recently, and it was with error, and it was super annoying because I didn't know what was failing or what was the linting problem. Linting problem, whatever, it's fine. Like, sure, I fix it later. But errors, I need to fix right away. And then it was super difficult for me to differentiate. On the other hand, people might say that linting is important, so it should be an error. But I'd rather be a warning. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for your insights.
Sure. Okay. Quincy has a question. With version 12, I sometimes use the non-null assertion to get away with the not initializer. Is that okay, or am I abusing its power? No, I think that's okay. I think that's all right. That's fine, Quincy. That's because that's the way to go, I would say. Yeah, should be fine. Yeah, anything else? It's a good practice to use such TypeScript interface like this. Export type, allow types, key in, allow type boolean, or simpler ones should be used. No, I think that's fine. I think that's fine. You can also use record. I mean, if allow type is an enum, then you can probably go with something like this, record, and then just put allow type and then comma boolean. And that should also do, I guess. You want to give it a try, but that will probably do. So I wouldn't mind either way. Would be fine. Unfortunately, I have to leave now because I have a meeting with my company as well. But I guess there are no more questions either. Yeah, thank you very much, everybody, for all the questions. It was really nice.
Sure. Thank Juan again. And yeah, I think we also on top of the hour. So with that, we can conclude the meetup today, and see you guys in October.
All right. See you all. Bye-bye. Thank you.